Was old SCPSL really better? Am I and other people who are now discontent with the game just viewing things through rose-tinted glasses? Maybe. Maybe. But there is beauty in simplicity. Sometimes less is more. SCPSL has continuously grown in size and scope with higher quality assets, many new mechanics, and multiple reworks to existing mechanics. But with all this new and more fleshed out content, why is it that I find myself wanting to play SCPSL the least? Back around Megapatch 1's release, I played this game religiously. Hours a day, every day, without fail. I couldn't get enough of it. I probably clocked in just under 1,000 hours within half a year. That's an average of like 6 hours a day. But now here I am, more than 5 years later, and I have yet to play twice that amount, despite having 10 times the time frame to do it. Something has to have changed. Replayability is important for a multiplayer game. Single-player games can get away with just being memorable one-off experiences, but multiplayer games depend on a consistent player base to keep it alive. Without people sticking around, there's nobody for new players to mingle into, and the game draws its last breath. SCPSL's core design is highly replayable. There's countless levels of variation in the game. You can spawn in on one of several different teams, and within those teams, there's multiple unique roles with their own abilities. The map layout changes every game, and the entire game is driven by human interaction. And since humans are the most unpredictable things on the planet with free will and whatnot, it is near impossible for any 2 rounds of the game to feel similar. Combine this with the near limitless concepts of the SCP universe, and you have a perfect recipe for chaos. Anything could happen in this game, from memorable clutch moments to people saying stupid shit over the intercom.
PC, what tier are you? PC?
My wife beats me.
What?
So if this game is so perfectly set up for success, what exactly is the issue? Despite the supposedly endlessly replayable gameplay loop, there are times people start to feel things getting samey, and it makes sense why. Northwood can rework and rebalance the SCPs as many times as they want, but it doesn't change the fact that we haven't had a new SCP in the game since SCP-079's reintroduction back in Megapatch 1, more than 5 years ago. If you want to really be technical, the last brand new SCP was SCP-939, which is close to 6 years ago. Considering the game came out at the start of 2018, that means the game has not had a new playable SCP in its lineup for about 80% of its entire lifespan. And yes, I know about things like the skeleton and the flamingos, but those are holiday event SCPs, and they don't work as permanent additions. They're seasonal gimmicks, and they don't count. Yeah, sure, we've reworked pretty much all of them, and they're all wildly different from how they were originally. But on a surface level, it's the same cast. I don't understand what the holdup is. Imagine the disappointment of someone who hasn't kept up with the game. Hey, are there any new SCPs I can play as? I haven't played the game in years. No. SCPSL's core appeal is being able to play as the SCPs. Why has Northwood put zero attention into expanding the game's flagship feature? Probably so they can rework the respawn mechanics for the 500th fucking time. 10.0, Scopophobia. This introduced the ticket system. It's just a limit on the number of players that can respawn per team. Previously, even a single hiding human could lead to an unending cascade of respawns. Playing as the SCPs seriously felt like being Sisyphus sometimes, but the system led to some pretty toxic and cancerous metas. SCPs were encouraged to hide and stall for chaos insurgency, which would wipe out whatever MTF forces the SCPs didn't already destroy. The MTF were rewarded for camping the CI spawn wave, as there was only enough tickets for a single full wave, plus some spares. Certain actions from the teams would grant more tickets, like using SCP items or dealing damage to the SCPs. 12.0, Mimicry. This swapped out the ticket system for the token system, according to the wiki. I don't actually remember if that's the real name or not. Instead of limiting the respawns, the MTF and CI are constantly playing a tug of war. Various events would still affect respawns, but would simply pull the rope in one team's direction instead of just granting an extra ticket. And now they're wanting to overhaul the mechanics again! The details of it are currently exclusive to patrons, but I'll tell you right now, it's a fucking clusterfuck that reeks of metagaming. In all of these systems, there's a common theme. One team will respawn more often based on certain criteria, using SCP items, killing specific roles, reaching specific zones as a civilian, and a bunch of other miscellaneous things grant tokens. I have just one question. How? How the fuck does me eating sweets from a magic candy bowl correlate to Chaos Insurgency being closer to respawning over the MTF? That makes zero fucking sense. It's one of those video gamey things you don't realize is dumb until you examine it further. It really encourages people to metagame and do things they otherwise wouldn't, just because it means my team will have a higher chance to respawn. Eat every piece of candy you find because each one eaten gives you 1/10 of a token. Consume SCP-500 every time you find it, because each one gives nearly half a token. Put on 268 or throw 244 the moment you get it, because the first use of those items grants you a token. It's just bizarre. It's wasteful to do these things, but you're rewarded for doing it anyway because it pulls the rope in your favor. The only thing that should actually affect respawning is escaping or escorting a detainee. Usually though, this system just results in a snowball. If one team is doing good, they'll just continue to snowball further. If like 5 Class D escape at the start, then CI will have an overwhelming likelihood to respawn. It's too predictable. Wouldn't it be more interesting if those 5 Class D had a unique opportunity to fight an MTF, respawn, and the SCPs, rather than being drowned out in a sea of green people every time? All these systems tend to favor the MTF too, because the CI spawning first would be way too easy for the SCPs, since they once shared a win condition. Now we have a system that lets the CI be treated as targets, so throw away this weird tug-of-war bullshit and go back to the unpredictable system we had before. It's more interesting when we don't know what's about to happen. The fact that we're about to rework this system for the 3rd time in the span of 4 updates really shows how little of an idea Northwood has. In fact, actually, now that I think about it, the theme of literally every update has been rework for years. Don't believe me? 10.0, Scopophobia, SCP-096 rework, main menu rework, respawning was reworked to use the ticket system. 11.0, Parabellum, guns rework, SCP-173 rework, inventory refactor and hotkeys. 12.0, Mimicry, big code refactor, basically a rework. SCP-939 rework, minor reworks to every other SCP. Respawning was reworked to use a tug-of-war mechanic. 13.0, Refracted Reality, Unity 2021 and HDRP, basically rework the engine. Rework to 939's Mimicry menu, achievements rebranded. Also, they're remodeling the human classes at some point, so it's basically another rework right there. And they're supposedly doing a surface zone rework. It's all reworks. What new content have we actually gotten in the past years that is not a rework or replacement of previous content? 1 new MTF weapon for the captain, which is actually pretty good. 3 new weapons for the CI, which are mostly terrible in comparison to the original Logicer. SCP-330 and its candies, most of which have mundane effects that are occasionally useful, only really fun during Halloween. A bunch of miscellaneous meme items from SCP-914 that you won't see 95% of the time, unless some stalling asshole spends 10 minutes in 914 to make them. Stamina system. Blech. Status effects, 90% of which are unused on release. Most of them still are. A bunch of stuff exclusively for Christmas and Halloween events. Subtitles for Cassie. SCP-1853, 244, 2176, 1576. Items that range from meh to actually pretty entertaining.
Oh, that makes sense, actually. Let me guess, he decided to walk into a single room.
How does it feel to be dead? How does it feel to be dead?
Pretty good, actually. I died of lacerations.
Yeah, hold on. Let me crack open a can of saltiness.
Why is it salty?
Fuck you, dog, you fucking...
A new containment chamber for 939. A bunch of new sounds to replace containment breach sounds. You could still count this as a rework, really, but I don't know. Yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. All these years, and this is all we have to show for it. New permanent playable SCPs? Nope. New props or computers or something that lets us interact with the world in a different way? Nope. New ways of escaping the facility without 914 or finding keycards on the floor? Nope. New areas of the facility or just unique rooms with one-of-a-kind features or something interesting? Nope. The scale in 939's room doesn't count. New side objectives like 079's generators or turning on the Alpha Warhead? Nope. New playable human teams? Nope. New abilities or advantages for civilians that militants don't have? Nope. New chase music to at least spice up SCP encounters? Besides SCP-173? Nope. New playable game modes or something? Maybe a game mode where it's just militants versus SCPs for practicing SCP combat? Nope. Holy fucking shit. Where is the new content? Northwood has been so hyper-fixated on perfecting and reworking their old shit that we haven't had anything truly new in fucking years. Even now, they're reworking the heavy containment zone. What about the surface zone rework you promised years ago? You know, the most problematic, ugly-looking area in the game? But no, instead we gotta rework the zone that needs it the least. Fucking hell, man, this studio is so scatterbrained and disorganized, it's fucking laughable. So the new things aren't very good. What have they done with all these reworks in the past years? SCP-SL has become encumbered with a bunch of stupid bloat features that contribute nothing to its replayability and serve to only make things complex for the sake of it. Before things like scopophobia, humans were dead simple. It was very easy to pick up and play regardless of your skill or how hard you were willing to try. You could sprint around all you want without a care in the world, and guns were pinpoint accurate and easy to use, regardless of attachment configuration. There was a really obvious meta choice in the heavy barrel or muzzle booster, but unless you decided to put on the oil filter for some reason, any weapon you picked up would be reliable and consistent. Run around, find SCPs, shoot SCPs, laugh at funny shit that happens, and probably die as a result. Repeat. There was room to sweat your balls off if you wanted to, but if you just want to vacate your brain and relax, you could still get something done. Then came the Three Musketeers: Scopophobia, Parabellum, and Mimicry. The straightforward weapon system is now replaced with an overly obtuse new one featuring multiple inaccuracy penalties and poorly described variables. Recoil is more intense and rocks back and forth sideways. People were already terrible at shooting before, but now we can rest easy knowing the Stormtrooper players will have an even harder time hitting the broadside of a barn. There's a lot more emphasis on aiming down sight, which has always been a terrible idea since it slows you to a crawl, in a game where your primary means to survive is to keep your distance from the monsters that excel at killing people in arm's reach. The old weapon system had some room for expansion, but this is so out of character for the kind of game SCP-SL is. Whoever designed it must have played some games of Counter-Strike, a highly competitive team-based first-person shooter, and thought that movement-based accuracy penalties and recoil patterns would be a good fit for a casual asymmetrical game about shooting monsters and goofing around. If this isn't a perfect example of them being tone-deaf to their player base, I'm not sure what is. Just to demonstrate, here's some comparisons. This is the Project 90, the old incarnation of the Crossfix, with no attachments whatsoever. It goes nearly straight up with minimal climb. Now, this is the modern Crossfix default recoil. There's more climb, and the recoil pattern sends you drifting off far to the right and then back again. It's way more demanding than what we had before. Equipping the foregrip does help a great amount, but even then I'd say the old P90 was easier and more straightforward. Literally anyone could use this effectively. It's unfathomable to screw up. This is the old Epsilon 11 with no attachments. Once again, a straight line upward, but with a bit more climb compared to the P90. If that proved difficult to some people, there were two attachments that reduced the recoil by a pretty good amount. It's mostly the muzzle brake doing the work, and it has a slight damage penalty, but the recoil is so small that my grandmother could probably use it, and she's dead! Now, let's look at the current version of the weapon. Once again, here we are with no attachments. The climb is about the same, but now the recoil repeatedly swings left and right and pretty violently at the start. What if I equipped the grip and the muzzle brake? Previously that made a mountain of difference on the old version. Doesn't really do much. Stupid fucking lawnmower. Now, aiming down sights with a good stock attached does reduce the recoil by a large amount, but this is stupid. Again, the SCPs are fast and dangerous in close quarters. Why do you have to slow down so much and give up so much ground just to get a good shot when we didn't have this problem before? They added the FRMG, which proved to be slightly problematic. I wonder why. Oh, what's that? The recoil is simple and easy to use, so every player could actually use the fucking thing? Holy shit, what a revelation. And in the now public Patreon post, they word it as, the FRMG0 makes it very easy to dominate a round without requiring advanced gameplay tactics. Yeah, because learning to draw the letter S is advanced tactics. You know who won't struggle with any of this? FPS tryhards who can memorize the recoil patterns and then replicate them perfectly every time. Recoil is basically not a problem for them, since it's a fixed pattern. This is why the meta has been running accuracy builds the whole time. Any good player you see will likely run a build similar to this. Since the pattern is memorizable, it's far better to prioritize minimizing the one thing you don't have control over: random spread, of which there's a lot. No matter what you're doing, in old SL, bullets go exactly where your crosshair is. The new system introduces random bullet spread, oh goody. Every gun has a base hipfire inaccuracy. Then, that accuracy worsens if you're moving. Don't even bother jumping and shooting like you could before. If you fire, the accuracy continues to lower the longer you fire your weapon. Just, why is this system so much more demanding and difficult? We went from a simple weapon system with some basic customization, which any player could master in a short time frame, to a system straight out of 2021 Rust, which is overly confusing for new players and massively increases the skill floor. For those unaware, skill floor means level of skill required to be effective with something. I didn't come to SCPSL for deep first-person shooter mechanics. I came to SCPSL because of the SCPs. I'd rather invest my time learning the ways SCPs can use their abilities, learning to predict their movements, and other unique features of the game, rather than some cliché FPS mechanics I can find in dozens of other games that probably do it better. Fun fact, recoil patterns are also a huge invitation to cheaters, which SDPSL is known to harbor. I haven't seen a blatant cheater in years, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. You know what kind of cheat is the hardest to catch? Recoil scripts. There are countless ways to make these. Even my own Logitech mouse has a way to do it. Rust had to deal with these cheats for ages, and it got so bad at one point they eventually just started to ban specific brands of mice. And then they said fuck it and removed the recoil patterns entirely. The only thing the new weapon system improves upon is the presentation. The models, animations, and sounds are really good, but otherwise, this update is an absolute failure. I didn't think much of this feature when it was first announced. However, many of my friends at the time expressed their overwhelming hatred for the feature. Looking back, I actually understand, and I agree. This stamina system is fucking garbage. It accomplishes nothing besides forcibly slowing down the pace of navigation and preventing infinite loops on the surface. Previously, nothing was stopping you from sprinting the entire game if you wanted to. It was the default pace of the game. Walking was just kind of there, but that's fine. Sometimes people walked just because it was funny or more relaxing. Rather than adding more use cases for walking, like how it reduces your visibility to 939 and gives you quieter footsteps, or solving the surface infinite problem with level design adjustments, they took the lazy way out and just hard limited how much you could run. It's not like it makes a difference in chases. Even if your stamina is exhausted, door closing is more than enough to keep the SCPs at distance. The only time stamina actually gets people killed is when it runs out just before they get ambushed. The reason it runs out is because it's such a fucking annoyance to try and preserve it. Walking around constantly is unbearably slow, so if you want to move fast without exhausting yourself, you have to constantly eyeball the stamina meter until it's like halfway, and then stop to refill it, and then resume sprinting. Fucking hell, just let me turn my brain off and run around. This stamina system isn't engaging, it's a fucking chore. It just nags and nags at you constantly. There's a reason infinite stamina is widely used in various servers, it's because stamina fucking sucks. The micro HID is fucking terrible because of stamina. Even from a full bar, charging and firing the micro while sprinting will leave you with barely anything left to actually fire the damn thing. Look at this shit. It was already pitifully easy to avoid the micro, why not make it worse, said Northwood. Yeah, cool, the stamina system interacts with many other parts of the game. Weapons have weight that increases usage, armor increases usage, adrenaline refills your stamina and makes it infinite for a few seconds. Some candies restore it, 049's heart attack rapidly drains it, 207 makes it infinite, and probably some more things I'm forgetting. I don't care about any of these though because it doesn't change the fact that it's fucking boring and annoying at its core. We didn't have to deal with this pre-scopophobia. SCPs nowadays have many more ways to catch up to or flank humans. Stamina is not needed. It was a band-aid fix that didn't even do its job right. Oh boy, we all knew this one was coming. Fuck Hume Shield. This mechanic is the worst feature of SCP-SL. It's a plague that's infested itself into every SCP, once being limited to a select few. I think the best way for me to break down this pile of dog shit is for me to address every common argument for its inclusion. Number 1. Without Hume Shield, SCPs would be whittled down by chip damage. This argument is retarded. Taking small amounts of damage for a kill isn't a problem. It's just how PvP works. It's a trade. You lose maybe 100 to 200 HP, but in return you kill someone. Now sure, for most SCPs that's like 5 to 10% of their health. If we had 40 militants to kill and I took 5% of my health as damage each time, I would kill half of them before I kick the bucket. That sounds bad, but that's not counting multiple important factors that change everything. Namely, there's multiple SCPs. 5% of my HP is literally like 1% of my team's collective HP. Even if every SCP lost 10% of their health each fight on average, we could kill 40 people before everyone dies. But here's the thing, not everyone shoots back at you. Sometimes you catch people off guard and kill them before they can retaliate. Sometimes people are stupid and just run away without shooting. Sometimes people are reloading, or they're out of ammo, or they're healing, or who knows what else. Chip damage is not an issue. It's just a fair exchange. Even if the human dies, at least they get something out of it. Nothing sucks more than feeling your effort was for absolutely nothing. Hume Shield causes exactly that. Number 2, Hume Shield encourages team play. No, it doesn't. Hume Shield tries to mandate team play. Hume Shield's values are the perfect amount to basically shut down lone players, but the moment you introduce multiple enemies into the situation, its protection is laughable. Sometimes people just want to fly it solo. Maybe they don't care and just want to run around on their own. Maybe the people on the server are too much of a hassle to work with. Maybe they have SCP-207 active and don't want to slow down to conform to the pace of the group. Hume Shield says fuck you and tries to force players into a specific playstyle. It's ironic because playing solo is, on its own, the most suboptimal thing you can do anyway. So really, you're just making the weakest playstyle even more weak. Have you ever had a game where the MTF team sticks together like a gigantic mob and never splits apart? If you don't have something like SCP-096 on your team to act as a battering ram, you know how fucking difficult it can be to deal with them. Number 3, without Hume Shield, SCPs are incentivized to camp and run away. This one is actually true to an extent, but the logic can also be reversed. Hume Shield makes camping and running away tenfold better. If you've had to deal with SCPs holding something like the nuke silo, you know exactly what I mean. At least if the SCPs camped back then, they could be slowly whittled away. Nowadays, if there's no admin to stop them, they can just sit and regenerate any would-be damage until the cows come home. Yes, with Hume Shield, we're more comfortable pushing people. If there's nothing to be lost from killing a human, why wouldn't I take it? However, if it's plausible I will take damage instead, but running away costs me nothing, you can bet your sweet ass I am going to make a 180 turn and take a hike. One thing I don't diss Hume Shield for is helping SCPs with no HP left. If 049 is at 5% HP, then yes, they definitely need that last resort layer of protection. Otherwise, it's too risky to even peek your toe out into the line of fire. But as for everything else, it can enable the problems more than it can solve them. Overall, I think Hume Shield is just fucking awful. There's nothing fun for the human side about 500 or so damage being entirely nullified. If we take into account potential misses or other factors, that can easily be an entire magazine of ammo wasted. Considering how scarce ammo can be sometimes, it's completely justifiable that I get pissed off if it all goes to waste. There has to be a better solution. Hume Shield does make playing SCP more relaxed, but it comes at a massive expense to the human side of things, which I think should be a bigger priority, considering you play those classes far more. Without Hume Shield, SCP does get a lot more stressful, but at least it's a small slice of your playtime. Right now, this mechanic moves that stress load onto the human side, and since you're playing them like 5 times more often, that means you have to deal with that stress 5 times as much. It's just not worth it. I've ranted and ranted for minutes now. I think you get the point. I like old SCP-SL, and it's not because of rose-tinted glasses. Old SL is deceptively simple. It's easy. If you want to try hard, you can, especially when it's your turn to be SCP and show the humans who's in charge. But everyone, regardless of how hard they want to try or how skilled they may be, can load into a game and just chill. Sometimes the games get tense. Sometimes everyone is sweating their balls off, but it's natural. Now the game is catering to this competitive mindset with stamina management, recoil patterns, movement inaccuracy, Hume Shield, objective-based respawning, all this shit. There's a lot more demand on you at all times, and it's just exhausting. I often go through human rounds bored and annoyed, and by the time an SCP round rolls around, I'm so worn out that I struggle to enjoy it. SCP rounds used to be hard to play, even as veterans. We were much more limited and didn't have Hume Shield to cover up every minor mistake we made. A solid MTF team proved to be a notable challenge. Nowadays, SCP basically plays itself. SCP-096 and 079 are absolutely broken and let you tackle many otherwise difficult situations with brute force, and Hume Shield is there to act as your get-out-of-jail-free card as much as you want. Unless you severely screw up, you can easily go entire games without losing more than 10% of your health. There's no challenge, and it's just boring. SCPs used to be the underdogs. It was fun that way. Playing as the underdog can be fun, but only on occasion. When a good SCP team rose up, both teams were in for a challenge. It was fun for everyone. Now the SCPs are so fucking strong that humans can get steamrolled from the smallest of mistakes. If you get an SCP team with 2 or more veteran players, the outcome of the game is basically dictated right from the get-go. I used to go into SCP rounds thinking, how far can I go? But now I feel an entitlement to win because they're so powerful. Games are either stupidly easy with SCPs that don't know what they're doing, or unbearably hard with SCPs that know how to use every advantage to their fullest, of which there are now many, whereas previously there were few. All the while, I have to deal with frustrating recoil and stamina mechanics. Rather than widening the pool of possibility with new playable SCPs and side objectives, they just made the water go deeper, and those who can't swim in it drown in agony. Just look at the mindset of the community. SCP-079 has been a pain in the ass since Mega Patch 1, but most of the community stayed silent about him for years. Suddenly, post-Parabellum, and especially post-Mimicry, everyone is bitching about him. Yeah, he was always broken, but back then, we didn't care. Humans were so easy and low demand that a good SCP-079 became an interesting turn of events. Haha, funny pile of bodies at Tesla Gate, go brr. Now that fighting the SCPs in general is so much harder and more demanding, 079 stands out as an unfair, rage-inducing tumor. He multiplies that difficulty tenfold. This game is going down the path of Dead by Daylight, which suffers from the same issue. An awesome game with many different horror characters, each with their own unique powers against a group of humans attempting to escape from death. The specifics are different, but the theme is remarkably similar. Dead by Daylight has endless combinations of perks, map layouts, and killers, but as fun as I found the game when I first started, the game quickly started to do the same thing to me that modern SL does: exhaust me. The game's mechanics heavily incentivize trying your absolute hardest all the time, and I often just don't want to deal with it. Everybody runs the same fucking perks. Slowdowns and second chance perks. It's the same thing every time. It's fun to try hard and have those intense matches every once in a while, but all the time? Fucking hell, give me a break. This is the same feeling I have about modern SCP-SL. These mechanics that are meant to engage the player and make the game more interesting simply do the opposite. They stress me out and drain my stamina. Sometimes the games get sweaty. Sometimes you get pressured into taking the game seriously, but at least back then, it didn't take as much to get on the same level as everyone else. It didn't take much to be good at the game. Almost anyone could try hard, and if they didn't want to, they could still make an impact. We had old silly mechanics like 939's proximity voice chat, a mixed bag of mic spam and hurling insults at your enemies. Sometimes people were predictable with it, but who gives a fuck? It was often funny as hell. Now we have a more lore-accurate incarnation of the system with stealing voice lines, and while it does deliver a unique comedy of its own, you're not able to make your own fun with it, and instead rely on other people being funny for you, and then spamming their voice line 5,000 times, assuming they even let you use it in the first place. They could have kept both, but they didn't, because it's not realistic. Realism. I hate this word. Nobody fucking cares about realism. We want funny shit to laugh at and have a good time. SCP-SL's appeal is comedy and irony, not being spooky. Horror never lasts. It's a fallacy. Lethal Company proves exactly this. It's a horror game through and through, but everyone knows it just for the funny moments. Same with SCP-SL. Look up Secret Laboratory content on YouTube and you'll see an overwhelming amount of videos focused on comedy. Even people being scared is portrayed as funny or comedic. I know Northwood isn't going to listen to a fucking thing in this video for 2 reasons. 1, I'm an ex-game designer with a notoriously bad reputation. I'm a walking PR disaster for them, and most of the people there think I'm a lunatic, which they're probably right. Secondly, this. The stats don't lie. SCPSL has more players than ever, and while I would attribute this to SCPSL having basically a monopoly on the multiplayer SCP genre, Northwood will view it as, we are doing things right, and continue to do things the way they have been. Maybe I, and my friends, who don't play anymore, simply aren't the target demographic anymore. We're being tossed away and disregarded in favor of a bigger slice of the pie. What's great, though, is that SCP games are forcibly under the Creative Commons license. There is nothing stopping someone from making an exact clone of SCPSL and making it more like the old days. I would be lying if I said I didn't have a wish for SCPSL's entire source code to leak, because at least in that case Northwood's monopoly would be threatened, and they would have to actually get off their ass in case competition shows up. But you know what? All this complaining, all this ranting I've done, and I've done fuck all to actually propose any solutions. I don't think reverting everything back to the old ways is a good idea. Hell no. Old SL was plagued by problems of its own. But we can achieve a middle ground. Number 1. Add more fucking playable SCPs. This is the biggest, most obvious thing Northwood could do. We've been stuck with the same combination of SCPs for so long, no wonder we're fucking bored. In fact, we've only lost potential combos in the past updates. 939 used to have 2 instances, so sometimes a round could feature double 939, which was actually really interesting and cool, since they comboed with each other really well. 096 and 079 can no longer spawn with each other, because having one of them alone is troublesome as is, so having both in the same match is just a complete disaster. In a 4 SCP game, that means we've gone from 35 different combinations to about 14. If I did my math right. A single new SCP would double the amount of combinations and add a huge amount of new possibilities in the game. All it takes is one design document, which, as a former game designer, I can say there are multiple just sitting around, and one model, and some sounds. If Northwood can't do that within like 6 months, then that really tells me how lazy and slow they are. Number 2. Rework stamina to be more interesting and not a chore to work with. If you can't do that, remove it. This game was perfectly playable without it. Number 3. Severely streamline the weapon system. They are currently doing this exact thing actually, but they insist on keeping the recoil patterns and having sideways recoil. Throw that shit out the fucking window. All the weapons should fire straight upward with minimal amounts of randomized sway, so that FPS tryhards can't easily snipe people across the surface zone with a hipfire E11, and players less skilled with FPS mechanics actually have a realistic chance to hit their shots. You can tweak the specifics for different weapon classes to make them stand out from each other, but overall, anyone should be able to pick up any gun and be able to use it properly. Number 4. Butcher Hume Shield. This mechanic is abusable, frustrating to play against, and counterintuitive. We get it. The SCPs were fragile in the old days. I agree. But why did we decide to give them big regenerating shields? If they die too easily, give them more health to work with, or ways to restore it. You know what would be better than getting 200 Hume Shield for killing someone with good sense of the doctor? Getting 200 of my permanent health back instead. Hume Shield is a lazy, all-purpose solution that causes too many problems. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. If you listen to this whole monologue from start to finish, then I applaud you, because I am an insufferable piece of garbage. I made this video to get things off my chest, and I probably misrepresented myself multiple times, but, you know, whatever. I usually don't ask this, but if you agree with my sentiments, share this video around. Get people talking. Share your own thoughts and opinions. Northwood is often radio silent, but will generally listen if people raise their voices. Sitting here twiddling our thumbs isn't going to do anything. Maybe we could actually make something happen.